The term DL has been all over our screens lately. Once a survival strategy for Black and brown men navigating the perilous intersection of queerness and cultural identity has now been romanticized into a fantasy. DL culture has become a social media phenomenon.
DL men.
DL man.
DL men.
DL man.
TikToks about DL hookups amass thousands of views. Tweets declaring that DL men just hit different garner thousands of likes. Trauma has now been repackaged as desirability. The DL man is everywhere and nowhere. He's the guy who locks eyes with you at the gym for a moment too long. He's your friend's cousin who gets weirdly nervous around you. He's in your digital spaces, just beyond reach but close enough to pursue. For many queer men and some trans women, he represents the ultimate prize. The straight presenting, emotionally repressed, hypermasculine dreamboat who just might be secretly into you. But DL men aren't the prize. They're symptoms of a broken system, a world that still punishes queer visibility. And every time we romanticize them, we chain our worth to men who would rather hide than claim us. So if the closet is a cage, why are so many of us still trying to climb back inside with a man who's locked himself in? Gays? Let us discuss. Hello, bandanas, Khumo, Markham here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel where people watch me speak about whatever crosses my mind, and I am okay with that. First, I want to say thank you so much for all the love of my previous video. It has left my little bubble and reached so many more people than I anticipated, so welcome if you're new here. I hope you love it. I hope you continue to interact and grow with me. I've seen all of the recommendations that you have and all the videos that you want to see, and I promise I am working on them. And second, in regards to some of the comments that I received in my previous video, I feel like I have to make this disclaimer. This video, like every other one on my channel, is very nuanced. It can be viewed and discussed through various perspectives, and I'm just one person presenting it through mine. So you are allowed to disagree with me. That is why we're here. Always feel free to check me. That comment section is yours as much as it is mine. Anyway, with that said, let us get into this video. With our current TikTok feeds being flooded with content from the DL whisperer and the rising fascination and conversations surrounding this subculture, I thought it'd be great for you and I to fully dive into the DL man fantasy in full cultural, emotional, and social context. So grab a drink and let us get into it. The term DL, short for download, typically refers to men who engage in same-sex relations while publicly identifying as straight, often maintaining heterosexual partnerships and rejecting gay or bisexual labels. Rooted primarily in African American and Latino communities, the DL identity is defined by secrecy, hypermasculinity, and a deliberate distancing from queer culture. To understand this dynamic, we must first unpack why men stay in the closet in the first place. For many, the choice is not purely internal. It functions as a survival response to structural violence. Think homophobic families, religious pressures, cultural taboos, and physical danger. For Black and brown men, especially where hypermasculinity functions as both social currency and protection, queerness threatens their perceived strength and community standing. I mean, with religious teachings condemning homosexuality and cultural norms demanding traditional masculinity, openly identifying as gay or bi risks everything from ostracism to violence. The DL identity exists at the intersection of race, class, religion, and gender, making it not just about sexuality, but about navigating systematic oppression. But it's also important to note that not all DL men are trapped. Let us be real, okay? Not every closeted man is DL, and not every DL man is simply closeted. There's a distinction worth making. A closeted man acknowledges his gay or bisexual identity privately, often hoping to eventually come out. While both of these men conceal their same-sex behavior, the DL man often goes a step further by actively constructing a heterosexual persona to preserve cultural status. He doesn't just hide, he builds a life dependent on denying his queerness through girlfriends, wives, and children. This distinction reveals why my compassion for the DL man sometimes falls short. It's not a protective response to oppression all the time, but can become a strategic choice that prioritizes masculinity and community acceptance over authenticity. While closeted men might conceal their identity temporarily until safety permits coming out, DL men view their lifestyle as a permanent strategy, okay? They leverage heterosexual proximity to maintain dominance, avoid accountability, and distance themselves from visibly queer people or queer culture as a whole, often weaponizing this identity. They choose the closet to maintain straight privilege while still accessing queer intimacy, wanting the pleasure without the social cost. When seeking openly gay men, they impose very strict boundaries. No emotional connection, no public acknowledgement, no community.
So, you know, they'll keep it on the down low. They'll come and see you every so often. You know what I'm saying? They'll probably get your number. Or basically, it's kept on the down low. Nobody really says anything about it. If you see them during the daytime, which sometimes you do, you don't really, you know, let them know. You know, you don't really notice them in the daytime. You might give them a little eye.
Like, yeah, you'll see me next week.
You'll see me tonight. Yeah.
This calculated deception and exploitation is where my compassion reaches its limit, but that does not seem to be the case for many of y'all. So let us discuss why so many out gay men and some trans women are drawn to these unavailable, emotionally repressed figures. This fascination begins with the fetishization of the hypermasculine image, particularly in Black and Latino communities where, like I've mentioned, masculinity is a cultural cornerstone. DL men embody traits like dominance and toughness, presenting as straight passing figures who reject the perceived femininity of queer labels. A 2016 study in the Journal of Bisexuality noted that behaviorally, bisexual Black men often distance themselves from gay identities to align with these norms, making them appear as the ultimate masculine ideal to some gay men who view them as a rare trophy in a world that equates queerness with weakness. This hypermasculine allure is then amplified by the thrill of secrecy, which casts DL men as forbidden fruit. And let me tell you right now, we love a good forbidden fruit, okay? Especially when it's sporting a trimmed goatee, living in a bare bones apartment with just a mattress on the floor, giving you fire rounds while whispering in your ear, "You're the only boy I do this with." And you have no other choice but to soak it all up because you know you have to be out of that apartment before sunrise, as he cannot risk anybody seeing you leave, honey. That is an experience, okay? Sorry, I started reminiscing there, but it is this rush that we romanticize when describing the secret hookups with men who live double lives. Yet this thrill is fleeting as DL men prioritize a straight image over any emotional connection, leaving their sexual partners with nothing more than transactional encounters. And this is just me generalizing because I know that there's some of y'all that end up having long-term relationships with DL men. I don't know how y'all do it, sweetie, but it is this excitement of secrecy that feeds directly into the fantasy of conversion, where DL men become the ultimate conquest, the challenge of turning an unattainable figure into a queer partner. This hope, fueled by the ego boost of unlocking hidden desires, is perversive in queer communities, with some gay men believing that they can be the one to help a DL man embrace his true self. The myth here is powerful that under the surface of any emotional close friendship with a straight man is the potential for something more, if only were patient enough, alluring enough, or safe enough for him to come out. It's not entirely irrational. I mean, in a world where queerness is still criminalized, bullied, or punished, the line between the straight man and the DL often feels blurred. Many queer people know the pain of watching somebody repress their identity out of fear. Many have had relationships with men who couldn't fully show up for them in public. Ding, ding, ding. Okay, I went to a dominantly Muslim school, and being one of the only 4 openly gay kids made me somewhat of a beacon for these questioning boys. For those I did have exclusive relationships with, it sucked watching them grapple with their identity, because while our friends were kissing under the bleachers or gifting each other roses for Valentine's Day, we could only show each other affection behind closed doors with the hopes that maybe one day I'll get to hold their hands in public. But that never happened. So I know firsthand that the fantasy of the DL man is partially rooted in compassion, a desire to witness someone's becoming, but it's also rooted in ego. I mean, to be chosen by a man who rejects everyone else but makes the exception for you, that's power. That's a kind of validation that for those who grew up unloved or unwanted due to very unaccepting environments becomes addictive. However, this dynamic is corrosive. DL ideology doesn't just affect romantic relationships, it begins to reshape how gay men relate to straight men entirely. When the line blurs, every compliment from a straight guy, every moment of accidental intimacy, every shared bed on a boys' trip becomes charged with potential meaning. This breeds a form of emotional overinvestment. Platonic friendships are no longer safe spaces for vulnerability or companionship. They become speculative markets for repressed queerness. And it's getting worse. Part of what inspired me to make this video is a now deleted tweet that I came across that reads, "You want that straight guy? Quickest way to make a straight boy question his sexuality is by becoming his #1 best friend. There's so many guys that blur the lines when you're a bro that will get him off." Excuse you? Some of y'all are now actively seeking friendships with straight guys, not for the sake of connection, but because you view straightness itself as a puzzle to be solved. The idea is no longer what if he's gay, but how can I make him want me enough to realize he is? In other words, This obsession with DL men is starting to turn us into predators. Okay, let's call a spade a spade. Intentionally cultivating friendships with straight men in the hopes that they'll slip up or reveal queerness is manipulative. If a straight man befriended a lesbian woman with the goal of trying to convert her or make her fall for him, it would be seen as predatory. So why then should we, in queer circles, shrug this behavior off as harmless? What makes this worse is how often it is disguised as emotional intimacy. A gay man may become a straight friend's confidant, therapist, emotional crutch, not because he values the friendship, but because he's hoping to be there when the mask cracks. Every bro hug, every drunk moment, every cry for help becomes reinterpreted through the lens of maybe. That is not friendship. That's emotional labor performed in bad faith. And do not get me wrong, we're not wrong for having desires. Desires are natural, we've all fallen for a straight bro, it's the canon gay experience. But the problem begins when desire turns into entitlement. The belief that you are owed reciprocation because you've been there for someone, or that you deserve a reward for loving someone in secret. That logic echoes the very systems of toxic masculinity and coercive behavior that we often criticize in straight men. At its worst, the pursuit of DL men turns into a queer version of pickup artistry, reading signals, ignoring boundaries, seeing no as maybes, and believing that persistence equals progress. It's becoming weird. And all because you want to be railed by a masked guy. Are masked gays not enough? Again, I do not fully blame y'all for thinking this way. This dynamic has been amplified by the media we consume. After all, the DL phenomenon gained major visibility in the early 2000s through sensationalized media portrayals. Talk shows like Maury, Oprah, Jerry Springer, they all capitalize on the shock value of download revelations, typically framing them as explosive betrayals of unsuspecting women rather than complex expressions of identity. These programs didn't just expose the private lives of closeted men, they turned those lives into circus acts, complete with gasping audiences and moral outrage. The secretly gay storyline became a commodity, a cheap thrill sold to viewers under the guise of concern. Even when media tried to approach the topic seriously, nuance was rarely the goal. The DL man was cast either as a predator, he's secretive, he's dangerous, or as a tragic figure in need of salvation, waiting for a patient level to pull him out of the closet. And yes, we've had works like Noah's Ark or Moonlight that dared to treat the DL experience with emotional depth, with tenderness, with cultural specificity, but these are exceptions. Mainstream portrayals have mostly flattened DL men into stereotypes. We've never had a healthy conversation about them, only scandal or silence. Then came social media. Platforms like YouTube and later TikTok gave us for the first time access to first-hand stories about DL men told by the very gay men who have encountered them. And to be fair, it didn't begin in bad faith. If you were online during the 2010s, you probably remember those grainy ass bedroom videos of creators like He Flawless recounting late night hookups or tender heartbreaks with DL boys. These story times were messy, they were honest, they were often hilarious. They were about us, our experiences, our longing, our frustrations. They were not instructional guides. They weren't invasions of privacy. They were storytelling. And it was fun. But like everything that starts off good on the internet, it quickly escalated into something not so good. We now find ourselves in an era of virality chasing content creators who have built entire brands around the performance of decoding and exposing supposedly DL men. Take creators like the DL Whisperer or Anwar the Dating Coach. I've also seen him do this a couple of times. Their content hinges on the promise that with the right tactics, you too can pull a closeted man out of hiding and into your bed. Suddenly, it's no longer storytelling, it's strategy. There are videos with thousands of views purporting to teach you how to spot a DL man by the way he sits, the way he speaks, or glances across a room. Others claim to offer foolproof conversational techniques that will get a straight guy to crack. Sexuality has become a puzzle. Consent has become optional, and queerness, once something that we fought to express freely, that we're still fighting to express freely, mind you, is now something that we are encouraged to coax out of people who haven't even given us permission to speculate in the first place. The shift is not just ethically murky, it's outright dangerous. These creators, perhaps unknowingly, are feeding rhetoric that mirrors the worst of what the religious right has said about queer people for decades, that we are groomers, that we are manipulators, that we are obsessed with converting the innocent. When TikTokers casually discuss unlocking straight men like they're cheat codes in a dating sim, it hands ammunition to anyone who's believed in the myth of gay recruitment. The right wing doesn't have to dig up so-called proof for their homophobic fears. Creators are posting it for them in HD, in trending audios. And what is more disturbing is that this DL discourse is now mutating into something even uglier. We are now seeing the violent actions of straight men being reframed as evidence of repressed queerness. I mean, at this point, we are all familiar with this narrative that people, especially men who commit hate crimes, are doing so because they are, battling sexuality themselves. We are used to this narrative. It's tired, and I've been sick of it for the longest time. But we are now seeing it being reframed as, oh, if he hit that girl, a straight man, mind you, if he hit that girl, it's because he's gay and hates women. Literal domestic abusers are being labeled DL by default, as if queerness is the cause of their misogyny.
He's cheating on you all the time because he likes men. He's treating you like that because he likes men. He's fighting with you all the time and competing with you because he likes men.
This kind of logic is insidious. Not only does it pathologize queerness, it absolves straight men of their actions. And this is being packaged and fed to majority of women I've seen being the audience of this, especially homophobic women who can now pass off all of these traits that they do not like about the men in their lives as just them being DL. If he paints his nails, if he has close male friends, if he has good hygiene, if he wears a crop top, if he's emotionally unavailable, if he's physically abusive. But some people are now saying, well, it's because he hates himself and he's gay. That is what this conversation has become. Let us be crystal clear. Abuse, violence, and misogyny are not symptoms of queerness. They're symptoms of patriarchy. And blaming gay men, whether closeted or not, for the horrors committed by violent straight men does nothing but protect those men from accountability. Worse, it reinforces the very systems that harm all of us. It turns queerness into a scapegoat. It turns our trauma into their excuse. This is what happens when we do not talk about DL identities with care. This is what happens when fantasy is allowed to mutate into entitlement, and when storytelling becomes a spectacle. In chasing the thrill, we've completely lost the plot. So how do we find the plot again? First, we can start by no longer engaging with this type of content. Stop watching these TikToks teaching you on how to spot a DL man. Stop sharing these viral tweets about secret hookups with men who don't claim you. Stop celebrating content creators who built their entire platforms on outing or speculating other people's sexuality. Every view, every like, every share makes us complicit in turning trauma into entertainment, in commodifying somebody else's struggle. The next step is to look within. Okay, let's shift this perspective. The DL man is not a challenge to be conquered or a prize to be won. He's a human being navigating systems of oppression that we should be dismantling, not exploiting. Our obsession with him has gone too far. It's time we release ourselves from it. Free us, okay? Time we let go of the fantasy that we're special enough to turn someone. We need to start asking ourselves, why are we willing to accept scraps of affection delivered in darkness when we deserve love that stands in the light? Why are we willing to continuously accommodate men who want our bodies but never our personhood? We deserve more than stolen moments and secret texts. We deserve somebody who chooses us in the daylight with people around. Okay, and I'm not saying stop creating safe spaces for your straight and questioning guy friends. It's the canon gay experience at this point, like I've said. But if they are meant to come out, and if they do come out to you, let it not be because you cracked some code or you wore him down. Let it be because he found the safety, the strength to choose himself. Queer love deserves to be loud. It deserves to be honest. It deserves to be whole. And it is time that we accept that DL men are not the prize. We are. And that is all I have to say. In fact, I could say more. We could discuss a lot when it comes to this topic, but I'm gonna end this video right here. Okay, do let me know all of your thoughts down below. I love you guys, and I will see you guys in the next one, which is coming a lot sooner than you expect. Okay, remember, if you do not slay, then you do not stay, and that's on period. Bye.